So during the meeting, you will need to use your mics in order for it to come through on the live stream. So you're just hitting that middle button in the middle of the mic.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to East Devon District Council's Audits and Governance Committee on the 27th of July 2023. I am your Chair, Councillor Sam Hawkins, and I'd like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start by doing a roll call of committee members present. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Starting with yourself, Councillor Hawkins.
Present.
Councillor Burrup.
Present.
Councillor Bloxham.
Present.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Present.
Councillor Goodman.
Present.
Councillor Levine.
Present.
Councillor Nicholas.
Present.
And Councillor Olive.
Present.
Thank you. You are quorate, Chair.
Thank you, Amanda. Agenda item 1, public speaking, with no members of the public registered to speak. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. If anyone has any comment on the set of minutes from the 23rd of March 23, please do this by raising your hand. If I have no raised hands, I will take that as an indication that you agree with the minutes to be approved. I see no hands, so thank you. We'll take that as the minutes of the previous meeting are recommended to be agreed. Agenda item 3, apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Steve Gazzard and Councillor Derek Haggerty. On to agenda item 4, declarations of interest. I think if anybody has any declarations, please may raise your hand to claim what that interest is. I see no raised hands, so that's fine. Agenda item 5, late items, matter of urgency, there are none. Agenda item 6, confidential and exempt items, there are none. And agenda item 7, internal audit progress report, SWAP. So I'll hand over to Lisa Fryer from SWAP for that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My first item this afternoon is the outturn report for 22-23. So it's the final progress report for the year. I'll draw out some of the key points for you. I will focus that on page 12, where you'll see there the audits that have been finalised since the last progress report. The first one there is on climate change, which we gave reasonable assurance. The focus of that audit was delivery of the Council's climate change strategy, where we gave reasonable assurance and recognition of the embedding of the foundations to tackle climate change. But there were several areas where improvement was agreed, the key ones being closer linking of the action plan to the strategy. It was agreed that there should be more work to cost all actions in the plan, and that there would be more scrutiny and monitoring of action owners on the implementation of their actions, with better data available for monitoring, and a dashboard is actually in progress. I would say overall that was a reasonable assurance opinion, which is really positive. We also completed an audit on asbestos with our housing compliance work, and that one we returned a limited assurance opinion. The summary one-page report for that audit can be found on page 16. The main issues identified were data quality issues, where we found some gaps and inconsistencies on open housing and the asbestos register. This affected the schedule of some re-inspections and the completeness and accuracy of some of the KPIs. An update on progress made is the subject of the next agenda item, so you will receive an update on implementation towards those recommendations very soon. We have also finalised a follow-up audit around this area, and are pleased to report that everything is now in progress with the number of the key actions seen through to completion. So that will follow, the formal follow-up will follow at the next progress report, but I can report now that it is a positive follow-up that you will receive. The other piece of work that was completed in the period was a follow-up audit on our housing invoice payment process. So that was a limited assurance in the previous year, and whenever we issue a limited assurance opinion, we automatically follow up that piece of work to give assurance that those actions agreed have actually been implemented. The original audit, that covered the ordering and invoicing of housing contractor invoices, and I'm really pleased to be able to report that all of the management actions relating to the significant risks were found to be complete, and no further monitoring by internal audit will now be required. There was just one thing that was ongoing, and that was a small proportion of retrospective raising of invoices. But at the time we did the follow-up, a report was already available and being distributed on a weekly basis to enable better monitoring and investigation of that finding. That was the key points really to draw out for you. I will just draw your attention to Appendix B, which gives you a full list of the audits that were completed this year in the plan. That will also be relevant for my next agenda item on the annual opinion. And you can also see there there are 3 pieces of work still to be completed on that plan, and I fully anticipate that those will be coming to the September progress update. So we've just got 1 at draft and 2 more of our audits we're still in progress. Thanks very much. We're happy to open it up to questions.
Thanks, Lisa. Just to add as well, for the reasonable audits, they go on to the Council of Library and Modern.gov, so that you've got access to them if you want to have sight, but they're not included in the papers just to prevent some information overload. And as you'll see with the limited one, we've got the relevant officer speaking on the next item. Around that item, just show progress has been made. So if anyone's got any questions, please go ahead. Councillor Goodman.
Thank you. I just want to talk about the climate change, where you put reasonable, and the action plan. And it's obviously, from what I understand, it's the actions from the action plan that you are questioning. What is the service now suggesting they're going to do to correct that situation going forward?
So I think in overall terms, we're pleased to be able to report that that is a reasonable opinion. But when we do our work, there are, nothing's perfect, is it? So there were some actions that I thought, because it is, a key risk for the authority, that I would just mention what those areas of improvement were. So, I say nothing's perfect, and so we said that there is an action plan which actually lists out what needs to be done to take things forward, but we just felt that should have sort of more closer monitoring and oversight, and that was the action that has been agreed.
So we will see action, because it's something I personally, as a resident, kept on about the action plan. You're now notifying that is an issue, but the service now are going to go away and start to have some more meaningful actions in reporting back to council.
I think they've got an action plan. The issue that we said is it just needs to be monitored a bit more closely to make sure that progress is made. Yeah,
thank you.
And that was agreed. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Just a question on page 17 on the 1-page follow-up summary, if I may, please, Lisa. The key findings, it says, whilst a report has been created of invoices where the job order has been raised retrospectively, no evidence was provided of the agreed action for having been completed. Is that form?
Sorry, could you just take me to that?
I'm just trying to
first
see
again?
under the key findings on page 17,
Yeah,
the one page.
yeah.
So that I'm just trying to make.
Well, is it in the
reading
red? The red.
Yeah, the
box?
red-
Well,
the red
a
one.
report has been created of invoices where the job order has been raised retrospectively. No evidence of the agreed action for having been completed. That finding there relates to, because there's a table above which summarises the findings that we were following up, and that relates to the lowest level priority 3, that is the only one still in progress. So I did want to stress that we were really pleased with that follow-up work, that, you know, the priority 1, the priority 2, which are the most significant priorities, have been done in their entirety, but there's just one priority 3, which is the lowest level priority, that although work has started, is not through to completion. So I think overall it's a really good picture, and there were just a small proportion of invoices where retrospective ordering was still found to have taken place, and the service had recently then introduced a new report that was distributed weekly that would then alert people to that fact, so more action could be taken. It's just, I think at the time of the audit, there wasn't enough evidence to show that that had been effective. So it wasn't a control being put in place, but we just didn't have time to actually give full assurance that that one has been seen through to completion.
Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, as a committee, we're just noting this report, which will mean we'll move on to the following item, agenda item 8, the Housing, Property, Asset and Asset Compliance Position Report, and I'm handing over to Michelle Davidson.
Thank you. I'm Michelle Davison. I'm the Compliance and Cyclical Servicing Manager for East End District Council, sits within the Property and Asset team. I was asked to present this report, and the attached report is for the committee to note our current position with compliance in relation to the council's housing stock. As the Compliance and Cyclical Servicing Manager, I'm responsible for landlord's compliance of approximately 4,200 properties, which is across the district, which includes domestic properties, communal areas, blocks of flats, community centres and district offices. We've recently reviewed our approach to monitoring compliance to ensure a high level of governance, and we're implementing a newly defined compliance dashboard, a copy of which is actually attached to a report that you can see. The dashboard is presented to our leadership team and the Housing Review Board, who have full oversight of all the key areas of compliance. The dashboard covers the big 6 areas of compliance and also the new legislation in relation to fire doors and smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. We're working on enhancing our reporting tool to spread across all areas of cyclical servicing, such as air source heat pump servicing, PIV servicing. Following the recent asbestos report and in line with our own protocols, we carried out a full data validation to ensure the accuracy of data held within our asbestos register. Work was undertaken to address such issues raised within the audit, and during this time we've actually had a change in staffing with myself returning from maternity leave. We've embedded our new asbestos surveying contractor, who actually provides extensive updates to the asbestos register on a regular basis following completion of asbestos surveys. And this ensures that the data is accurate and live. As part of our ongoing audit process internally, we will also be carrying out a full audit of all of our data every 6 months to ensure accuracy. Following the follow-up audit, we are on target to complete the other actions identified within the timescales agreed. Is there any questions for myself? I'm sure there will be.
No, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
It'll be useful, I think, to understand how much. I know, obviously, where it says risk reviewed, there's a concern of maybe not as strong as risk to life, but how much of this is, and then you've touched about there being some data cleansing. So how much was
Yes.
it just actually our spreadsheets might have had the wrong data, and how much of it is
absolutely.
there is a concern?
So we've carried out a manual validation of all of our data. So the legislation is. So the control of asbestos regulations, regulation 4 duty to manage, which is around our communal areas. That's what the legislation is. We are fully compliant with that area. So we have asbestos communal surveys and re-inspections for all of those areas. The asbestos register itself is a document that we have to hold. However, under the construction design and management regulations, prior to work being undertaken by our contractors, we actually physically give a copy of the survey to the contractor. So whilst there were some issues with inaccuracies, we had a fallback where we were actually given the physical survey to the contractor. However, we've gone through this data cleansing exercise and we have updated, and you'll see in the next follow-up audit, we have completed those actions.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody other questions? Yes. Councillor Goodman.
Yeah, I'm particularly concerned about the electrical testing.
Yes.
And picking up what they said here, that on review of the electrical testing, the 5-year testing regime had not been re-procured in a timely fashion. I don't want to go into why that happened, but can you give us assurances that that's been put right so it doesn't happen again?
Yes, of course, Councillor Gibbons. Yes. So we have, we recognised when I come back from maternity leave that we hadn't procured that in a timely manner. I very quickly procured a new contract for the 5-year electrical testing. We've mobilised a contractor very quickly and is on site. Full compliance with all electrical testing will be received by week commencing the 9th of October 2023. And we have identified it as a risk with regards to re-procurement, and leadership team have a oversight now of all procurement that needs to go on in a timely manner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, thank you. And we'll then move on to agenda item 9, the back to swap for the internal audit annual assurance opinion 22-23. Lisa.
Thanks, Chair. As I said in the training, we're required annually to produce an opinion of the work that we've carried out over the year. So in the packet on page 30, there's a high-level summary of that opinion work. You can see there that the opinion that we gave for 2023 was a reasonable opinion, and that means that we're satisfied that there's generally a sound system of governance, risk and management and control in place. Another key point to draw out here is that we reported on no high corporate risks in the year. We did 3 follow-up audits, and out of the 12 actions that were followed up, 6 have been implemented. So obviously that just represents 50%, and so we do think that is an area that could be improved on in the future. More detail can be found on the annual opinion on page 33. The main sources of information that we use to give you the annual opinion are the assurance reviews that we carry out over the year that are the subject of the quarterly progress updates. Also, the follow-up work that we carry out is important because obviously that's following up limited assurance pieces of work to demonstrate that those agreed actions have been implemented. We also take our grant certification work into consideration and any advisory pieces of work that we've done as well. We've got a good relationship with East Devon management, and the council is open with us and does approach us for additional pieces of work and advisory work. And I can say that I've seen that myself already. You know, I've only been in post here since April, and we've got additions to the 23-24 plan. I'm now starting to meet with assistant directors, and in the 3 meetings that I've had already, they're coming forward with lots of good ideas of things that we've not audited before, you know, that we could consider for inclusion in future plans. In terms of the breadth of coverage, the audit work has been performed across the organisation, across key services and core areas, and in relation to a number of the council's strategic risks. And you can see that in more detail on page 35, where we've shown the corporate risks for you and mapped our audit work to that. And it isn't possible in any year to look at every single strategic risk, but we did audit almost half of them in 22-23. And you can see there in the table that the previous year we'd also audited quite a number. And in this year's plan, which we've only agreed the first 6 months at the moment, you know, that we are covering more strategic risks. on page 36, there's more information on the audit outcomes that have formed the basis of this opinion. So I've already said that we haven't reported any high corporate risks. And you will see that on that page that out of the assurance pieces of work that we delivered over the year, there were just 2 that were limited assurance. Then the next page, page 37, that gives more of a breakdown of the audit plan delivery. Almost half of the reviews were reasonable assurance, with 11% limited. Then moving on to page 39, we also covered a page on SWOT performance. A key measure for us is the results of the satisfaction surveys that we send out on completion of each audit. Really pleased to say that those percentages are very high, so that's really good news for SWOP. And we do set ourselves a high target of 95%, so we've even exceeded that. We have to comply with the public sector internal audit standards, and they are externally assessed every 5 years. The last time we were assessed was in 2020, and we were found to be compliant, so that should be reassuring. Those are the main things I wanted to point out from the report, so happy to open up to questions.
Don't all rush at once.
Thank you.
So I'll open up then if anyone's got any questions, please. I don't see a flow of activities, but I can see Councillor Goodman going for his mic.
Yeah, thank you for that. You said in your intro before the meeting that you look after a number of councils, SWP does, and benchmarking is key. Is it possible to answer this question? If it's not, I accept it not, and if it has to be done confidentially, I'm fine with that. When you consider what we've achieved this last year, and it looks good from what you've done, how does that compare to other councils? Is an average, above average, below average?
It's so interesting that you said that, because I was asked that at ELT that I attended a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't have that at my fingertips, so I've asked SWOP to actually do that piece of work, so it's in the progress of being completed at the moment, so I will be able to report back on that, but I can't quite yet.
I think in the past we've had a benchmarking bit that does come round at some point that helps see where we sit. I think it's limited to the more sensible councils to compare us to than the full whack, but it gives you an idea and exactly what we want to see where we do sit. I always find it funny how any auditing language, they'll only ever tell you a reasonable at what you did. You'll never get you did good.
If I may, sorry.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, in case I've missed something, how and when does the strategic risk register get reviewed?
In about 20 minutes' time. Right, agenda item 12. But it is an ongoing piece, obviously, for the council as an organisation, and then as a committee, it comes to us at various points throughout the year, because it's a living document as well, so it makes sense that we don't just see it once a year and sign off on it. Councillor Balp.
Just the overall client satisfaction and values of the organisation surveys, who completes those?
It's the key contact for the audit, typically the manager involved in the audit.
Okay. Don't see any other hands, so thank you, Lisa. And we will move on then to agenda item 10. 10 on page. Revenue and Capital Outrun Report 22-23, and I'll hand over to Simon for that one, shall I?
Yeah, thank you. So this report's gone to Cabinet already. So this is our financial outturn for 22-23. It's coming to you for information in terms of where our finances sat at the end of the year, how did we do against budget for last year. But also, if we get our accounts right, the same numbers that appear in this outturn should appear in the accounts when you get them signed off, subject to audit confirmation and checking. So you'll get the final accounts, which sit at the end of this process, if you like. But this is sort of the management accounts of the authority in terms of our financial position. So you'll find a link that will click you on to the Cabinet Outturn report. That's the meat of the item under discussion. So just looking at the summary of that report, basically the council's in a good financial position at year end. It ended the year in, so we look at our finances in three pots, if you like: the general fund, housing revenue account and capital. So if we look at anything to do with revenue, day-to-day spend is either captured in the housing revenue account, which relates to anything to do with us as a landlord, our council houses, or anything else revenue we spend on day-to-day, refuse collection, anything you can think of apart from housing goes in the general fund. And then our third pot is capital, which is anything you spend, usually more substantial sums of money, but is on assets, things that last for over a year, if you like. So when you see any of our financial reports, they'll come and report it against those three pots, if you like. So general fund, housing revenue account and capital. So this report does centre around that and produces the finances under those three headings. So in terms of the general fund, which is the majority of where our services are captured, we ended the year with a surplus against the budget of 1.4 million. So that's quite a significant underspend or overachievement in terms of income areas. Mainly, if you look at the detail behind that, most of our services were there or thereabouts on budget. There were particular things that came through in year that were funded from reserves, but council agreed to those. So you'll see variations across a number of our portfolios and services, but they are explained. The reason for the surplus is mainly made up of two areas. One is the interest rate rises in the year. So on our cash balances, we earned more income than we expected because of interest rate rises. But the big area was on business rates. We got a significant sum extra in on business rates than we projected. We were telling members through our monitoring in 2-3 that would likely be the position. And actually, when we set the budget, we thought that we would probably overachieve in that area. And we have done. That additional income has been taken into our future budgets. So when you think, well, we've got some bunts now for future years, we have accepted that extra income and built it into future years now. So for the general fund, it's 1.4 million surplus. What the recommendation from Cabinet to Council, which has now been adopted, is that was moved into our transformation fund. So that will be used at future discretion of the council in terms of transformation, which is around invest to save. So we know we've got significant deficits in our medium-term financial plan. Often, in order to create savings, create efficiencies, you often need a bit of investment in areas, and that money is at the discretion now of the council in order to facilitate some of that work. So that's the general fund. Also to mention, the report highlights in terms of our general fund balance, so the amount we hold in reserves in case of emergencies in year, we've maintained it at the 4.3 million. So you've put some away in reserves, but you've also maintained your general fund balance. In terms of capital, in year we spent nearly 16 million. We plan to spend 18 million. And again, within the report and the attached appendices, you can see the various schemes, what we spent it on and how close we were to budget. So you've got there sort of a £2 million underspend on capital. The majority of that is about timing. So basically, on a capital budget, goes over more than 1 year often. We've got an underspend of a couple million, but we'll transfer that into the new year and those projects will be finished off. The biggie to highlight, which looks a little bit scary to start with, is the housing revenue account, in that they actually went overspent by 1.3 million in year against the budget. Having said that, the majority, if not all of that spend, was a saving that they made in 21-22. So that is work that was planned in 21-22, wasn't spent on the housing revenue account, a number of the asset maintenance works. But what they've done is catch up in 22-23, which is why you've got that overspend on the 22-23 year. The report goes into quite a lot of detail, quite a lot of variations are noted and explanations. But in terms of this committee, they're the highlights in terms of what you'll be looking at when you get the accounts. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Simon. Yes, as Simon says, it's gone through Cabinet and Council, and it's for us to set the scene, I guess, when we get our accounts.
Yeah.
But of course, if there are any questions, do feel free to shout. Otherwise, we'll move on. I'll drag that. Oh, go on.
Look.
Nearly got away with it.
No, it's not about this one, Chairman. But when we take this recommendation on agenda item 9, we didn't agree the recommendation on agenda item 9,
Someone's paying more attention than I am.
and it was just we went straight
thank
on
you.
after discussing it, and I just want for the record for us to agree the recommendation on page 27.
So, oh yeah, the members are asked to note the internal report. Yeah, we can take that to a vote. Then, are you going to propose?
I will propose that we accept the recommendation.
Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Amanda's quickly updating her notes.
Yeah, we all need to do that for number 7 then, Chair, and number 8.
Okay.
How many years have you been doing this?
Oh, we normally slow them and move on.
You haven't done it the whole meeting. I just thought it was a new way.
I was waiting to get told off.
No, it's because it was to note. So, but yes, no, you're.
We are voting
if
to
we're
note.
going to do that, we should have done it for the others. So, if you'd like to just go back to number 7, which was the internal audit progress report presented by Lisa. So,
Can we do it en masse?
Chair, number 7.
Right, there has been proposed, we've been seconded. Can I have everybody in or not in favour of noting item 7? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item,
Number 8,
item 8.
the housing and property and assets compliance
Can I
position.
propose?
Yeah.
Councillor Behop,
I'll second.
second.
Okay.
Those in favour? Thank you.
9.
9. I'll propose. You want a second?
Yep, second.
Thank you. Those in favour?
And Simon's revenue and capital outlet.
Oh, I don't know. Are we happy to note? If so, I'll propose. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Olive, I saw it first. Those in favour? Right, we're back on track. We can note things. I say we're back on track.
So,
Agenda item 11, South West Mutual Regional Bank. Short and sweet report from Simon, please.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add, really. This report came forward at the request of this committee as an update in terms of the investment the authority made. I've explained in the report on the basis that the council, it was termed as an investment, but I think it was more, we treated it in our accounts as a grant, basically, in terms we didn't treat it as an investment that we were likely to get back in terms of the risk. So the investment has already been written off. But it is, I would suggest, quite disappointing in terms of what the council wanted to achieve through funding this element. And my take of it now is it is dead in the water, really, in terms of going forward. But happy to take any questions. But I think it was just an update of where it's at.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it came from a question last time, didn't it, around the investment, and it's sat now at £1 in our accounts, which is probably an appropriate value based on the background here. Have we got any questions, Councillor Goodman?
Just an observation. It was disappointing to me because actually it looked on paper to be a really good investment or grant. But what struck me was on the original paper of February 2019 to the Cabinet, it said after 6 years we get 6.5% dividend. But because we got double, we were a founder mum, we would get more. However, when it came to the June report in 2021, all of a sudden that dividend went down to 5 to 6% with no noted from the chairman of why that's happened. And that was disappointing. And it's only because I read it for the first time that I noticed it. Nothing we can do, but I think we have to support. That is a pound on the council. I think it's one of those things.
Yeah, I think that fairly sums up the situation.
Shame.
Otherwise, if anyone's got any questions, we have a recommendation to note the report, which I'll happily propose. Councillor Goodman's second. If we can take a vote then, please. Thank you. Agenda item 12. This is the risk review summer 2023 that everyone's been waiting for. Just for the benefit of members, the actual individual risks are within the links to background information on the second page of this, so page 49 of your papers together, that go into quite a big table of risk and control. This is saying you're doing the item, but I thought Joe was. That's why I paused for a second. Joe, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, committee. Yes, so in front of you, you have the risk report for summer 2023. So what I thought I'd do is there may be some new faces to the committee. So I just wanted to give a bit of an overview as to how we manage risk within the organisation. So we review our risk register twice a year. We do a full risk review twice a year, and there are two parts to our risk register. We have the strategic risk register, which is very much set at the SMT level and is managed by, or responsible officers are at the strategic level, SMT level, and they review those. I get SMT to review those risks twice a year. Then we have the operational risk register, which is allotted to each of the services, and each service has a section within the operational risk register that they manage, that they feed into. In terms of risk identification, so that can happen at any time through the year. Obviously, if a service notes that there's a risk they see coming and they want it to go on the risk register, they inform me and we work together to put it on. In a more formal manner, we also ask services to look at risks as part of the service planning, which happens in the autumn. So we do it then as well. And then obviously twice a year when we undertake risk reviews, I ask services at that point as well, do you have any new risks or do you have any risks that we need to remove? So we have previously, risk owners have updated their risks within the software that we use to manage our risk register. It's a system called SparNet. And what I've been doing in the last sort of couple of years is actually, rather than just letting services update that system, that software, I've actually been visiting each of the services and working it through with them to actually, so we have, so I can assure SMT in particular that actually I've worked with services to kind of understand their risks and what they're actually putting into the risk register and what they're updating their risks with. So just to give some assurance on that. Moving forward, I've got some plans to ask SMT to have some workshops twice a year, just to look at a more in-depth level at our strategic risks in particular. So I've put forward a timetable for that to happen. So that will happen in October and April before the full risk reviews, that SMT can have a sort of an opportunity to workshop the risk register and any new risks that might be on the horizon. So as I've said, our risk register is held in a system called SparNet. So the reports that you've got here are outputs from that system. And we can provide all sorts of risk reports. It can be provided in all sorts of ways. But what I've tried to do this time is just to give you the full risk for anything that is of a high risk value for all of our operational risks. Then the remainder of the operational risks that are medium or low, it's just an indication of what they all are. So that's the second part, the second appendices that you've got. And then the third is the full strategic risk register, which lists out all of the strategic risks and the control actions or mitigating actions that we're taking to support those. Happy to take any questions about the reporting, happy to make any changes for the future as to what you might want to see. The reason that I haven't given the full risk register is because there are 81 operational risks, and when I do that, it's really big. However, what I would say at any time, if anyone is interested in looking at the full risk register, please do just let me know and I can provide that for you. So it is an open, it's an open register that you can all have access to and view. If there's something in particular that you see that you want more information on, then I can provide that. And also moving forward, if you decide that you want to keep it with just the basic information for medium and low risks, if you want more information on a particular risk before the meeting, again, do give me a shout and I can provide that. Now, I'm happy to amend the report moving forward as to what people would particularly like to see. We've trialled it in lots of different ways previously, but happy to work with the committee as to what you would like to see. But this is sort of a starter for 10 for you, and hopefully we can build this together as you would like. But if you've got any questions about any of the risks or also what it is that you're seeing within the report, then obviously do let me know.
Thank you, Joe. And I think you're right. The work you've done on this has been great because it's got a lot better than it when I remember when sitting on this committee about 4 years ago. There are a few risks you were like, that's clearly been rolled forward since the 90s. So it is in a stronger place than it's been. And it's, as you say, it's very much our report to see where, as a council, as an organisation, risks have been identified, but how we want that presented. We've got a choice. So I know in the past, I think we had it where we had, say, a quarter of the register in 4 different meetings. So it took it in more bite-sized chunks, but to see everything. Or we can have a bit less information, but maybe they're more detailed in the high-level risks. Ultimately, from audit, it's important this part's right because essentially this is what drives the whole rest of the programme. We know what our risks are. We know then what we need to concentrate to make sure that those bits are right, then everything else should fall into place. So yeah, if anyone's got thoughts, comments, questions. Councillor Olive.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this one straight off the bat because it's a little bit technical. But I was looking at the risk likelihoods in the strategic risk register, and it struck me that most of them say likely or higher, and referring to Appendix D, that's saying there's between a 40 and a 75% chance of that occurring. I wondered how we got to that figure, because, for example, the one that caught my attention is that there's apparently a likely residual risk that we're going to fail to ensure the council's sustainability. And yeah, I'll let you answer at that point.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so you're right. That is in terms of the sort of percentage, it's sort of 40 to 60%. Yeah, likelihood. I mean, that was the risk score is from the responsible officer. So how they judge what they think the likelihood might be. So they should review the risks and then review each of the control actions or mitigating actions and then make an assessment. Obviously, it is subjective to that responsible officer as to what they put. And we can, of course, challenge what has been put. But as I say, it is somewhat subjective to how they perceive that risk and the mitigations that are in place, if that helps.
Did you have any other follow-ups?
I mean, if nobody else has any questions, I do. I wondered, do we record the reasons why those determinations have been set at those thresholds?
No, not specifically, unless there's something that the officer feels should be noted and is put in the review note. I mean, that's maybe something we could talk. I could talk to them about whether they make sure that in the review note they set why they've scored in a particular way. Certainly, if a risk is registered as high, then they should put a note in as to what's happening and what the status of the risk is. But yeah, that's certainly something that we could look into, asking responsible officers as to why they've scored them in a particular way, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, and a note on that one, isn't there, from the individual? I think if I'm So yeah, we could take that forward, couldn't we?
Yeah, no, I think that's a sensible suggestion. If you look at the review notes, I often found John Golding had really good review notes on every one of those. It's a shame he's off. Any other questions? Councillor Goodman.
Yeah, you asked, or Joe asked, how do we want it going forward? I think the risk assessment, whether it's strategic or operational, is one of the most important things the council needs to do, because if you operate a proper risk assessment, then that drives your business and you know what you need to do. If you don't know what your issues are or your risks are, then it's not easy to drive the business. And I think this committee could well look at, say, one meeting, all of them over the year perhaps, but let's start with the high risk and examine them, and then examine the medium and the low. Because the other thing I would add is risks don't stay as they are, because the more mitigations you put in and you develop those mitigations and deliver them, then that risk comes down. And I'd like some sort of report that says for this committee, well, we've got, did you say 81 risks, but we've now moved 4 risks from high risk to medium risk, or 4 from low to medium, whatever it might be, just as a summary, and then examine what we've done, because I think it's important that we keep hold of this, because risk is really important. I've got some other issues about the format, but I've discussed that with Joe and Simon separately. But the risk, I think, for this committee is one of the key things we must do. I really do, and I think we need to give it some time. But understanding risk and the importance to a business is not a 5 or 10 minute job. It's a very important job for us to do, I think.
No, exactly. And obviously there is going to be some risks that won't move into a lower category, but as long as we've kept an eye on it, that's fine, because by their nature, risks are risks. You can't get rid of all of them, otherwise we'd all be sat in a cupboard at home hoping nothing fell on our heads. Joe, I don't know, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, absolutely, and that's why I pulled out from the operational risks, the high risks, and provided those in full, because yeah, it is important to keep a real eye on those ones. And also what I have provided before, and which I can do again, is that very sort of idea that actually providing how they were scored last time and what they're scored at now. If that would be useful, I can reinsert that into the report as well. So yeah, more than happy to do that. That would be helpful.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions? No, Joe, have you got enough sort of take away what the sentiment of the committee is for going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So I shall make some changes, and also I think it's going to be really useful for SMT to have the feedback as well from this committee about what's required. So it would be really good for me to be able to feed back to them and say, actually, they want to know why you're scoring things the way you're scoring them, and actually more detail is required, and that there's more scrutiny of the risks. So we need to make sure that we're providing enough information about what we're doing. And also, as you say, I will look at providing you with some sort of what they were scored last time and what's now been scored, so you can see the movement really of the risks, if that's useful.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? And I think, as you've probably already gathered, I'm not completely up to speed on this part of the agenda, but I recognise that it's the most important part. So, will there? Am I to understand that at the moment there's no way of us just logging into the risk register and having a look at it at any given time? We have to come to you and we have to ask you to sort of download a PDF and share it.
Yeah, I don't think you've got access to SparNet. I don't think that's. It's. I don't know how we. It could be worth a conversation with. Yeah.
SparNet's got an awful. It's whether we can, well, give access. First question. The software I don't know and how, but we can definitely inquire. And it's also how we can restrict, I suppose, because there's lots of other elements in there that for GDPR are just not appropriate, sort of thing.
Okay.
But we can have a look.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think. I mean, I would have thought, at the minimum, a dashboard before each meeting, which shows, as you say, tracking from one period to the next progress, because especially for us newbies, a snapshot in time is quite hard to get your head around. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It might be an idea. Sorry, I'm just partly thinking out loud, but from the SWAP reports, we've relied heavily on the councillor library area in Modern Gov.
Right.
So whether that can be an area that reports can be exported into, so at least then everyone's got access and can go in and see the bit more detail as and when.
Yeah.
Whether reporting a period's appropriate, I don't know, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that could be an alternative if we can.
That's something
Yeah.
I can work with you on that. Yeah. Okay. Lovely.
I need a recommendation. I need a proposal. So for this item, the recommendation is that the committee considers the current status of the risk following the risk review. It's not really something we can vote on, is it? Am I going to?
You might as well check.
Might as well.
Theme, yes.
We'll set a theme. We might as well. Do I have a proposer to set a theme? Councillor Goodman.
Setting a theme.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Levine. Got straight in there. And then all those in favour, please.
Sorry, what's the
sorry.
proposal?
I say it's essentially we're noting
It's noting
the report.
Yes.
But we will capture those actions, won't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those in favour. Thank you. Agenda item 13. It's a request from council, albeit the relevant meetings minutes, haven't been published, but I think nearly everybody was at the relevant meeting. Obviously, it's been captured through the YouTube, so if that was appropriate to at least bring it to this committee, the request regarding record keeping. And I know Simon's done a covering report, but I might have just introed it for you.
I've got nothing to add to that, Chair. I think I've captured what was required, but for this committee to consider, and the way to deliver that request, I would suggest, is through adding it to the audit plan for SWAP. But over to you, Chair.
Yeah, so we had a quick discussion, just tried to capture the sentiment effectively of the meeting when it was raised at council to what they were looking for us as a committee to do. As Simon says, SWAP's best place to do that initial work. And then depending on that outcome, it might be that actually we decide that there's improvements to what our current rules are, and then it becomes maybe an overview matter. So we do the initial legwork, and then from when we get the information in, we decide effectively what's next. It's not for us as a committee to come up with brand new rules, but it's for us to check the rules in existence are being followed, and where appropriate advise that actually maybe they should be looked at. So that's the report, essentially trying to capture what council wanted. I don't know if anyone's got any comments. Councillor Olive.
I was actually just a little bit confused. I thought one of the earlier reports on this agenda from SWAP had said that SWAP doesn't cover ICT because that falls under the remit of Strata to monitor and audit. So
Strata as an organisation have their internal audit done by Devon Audit Partnership. But the question we're asking is, as ourselves as an organisation, are we following policy, which obviously feeds into the IT, but we're not asking our Strata. If we're asking if Strata are retaining their records appropriately, then it's a DAP question. But because we're asking is EDDC retaining its records properly, that's a SWAP question. I feel like by the look on your face, I've not explained that very well.
Can I
Please
add?
do.
So also, Strata will only work on our instruction and keep records to our requirements. So it'll be under our policies that they'll be working to. So it's quite appropriate for this council to look at how that's managed, and then ask if if we need to make changes, ask SWAP to do that for us. Sorry, ask Strata to do that for us.
So we've got Sorry, Councillor Goodman.
Can I just be very clear what they're going to do? This is written information. This is nothing to do with any financial data of any sort. This is purely written data that they're going to investigate, because you could conclude that if they're going to check all this, there's something wrong with the data that's been put in and been checked by intern and extern in the past. Can we be specific what they're actually going to do?
My understanding, but what we'll put together a scope with SWAP, and we can circulate that round to make sure that members are happy and captured what you think should be in there. But my take of how it will look is, first of all, what policies we've got in place, what retention policies we've got, how long we should be keeping certain records for, electronic and written, I would suggest. Then, who's responsible for that? Is it within individual services? Does it sit within job descriptions? Is it one individual officer who's assigned to that and to keep that policy up to date? And then normally how SWAP would work is, okay, that's what you told us is in place. Let's go and test some areas and make sure that's happening. So I understand that the topics could be huge, could be massive, but in terms of what policies and testing is that in place, that's how I would look at it. But we can work it up with SWAP and make sure you're happy with the scoping.
Yeah, just felt it was important to note that this was not about checking the data in terms of figures, etc., because it was a bit confusing to me, and I wanted you to really elaborate, and you've done that very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions at this stage? No. So the recommendation is that SWAP are requested to undertake an audit into the council's record keeping and to make any necessary recommendations for improvement, and that this is to be scheduled within the third quarter of the 23-24 audit plan. I believe we've checked that there is capacity for it to be in the quarter 3, isn't there?
Perfect.
Before.
We've got the first 6 months planned to the end of September, and we need a new set of audits for the second 6 months.
Thank you. And then the second one is taking into account the views of the committee, the chair and the vice chair agree the final audit scoping with SWAP, the Director of Finance and Director of Governance and Licensing, albeit obviously we'll do essentially an email consultation before, so we can feed everyone's views in, but it's just keep it as practical as possible and get it moved forward. I'm not sure when we next meet, but it's not for a little while. September. So I'll happily then propose those recommendations, if I can see if anyone will second. Councillor Bearhop, I saw out the corner of my eye. Those in favour then, please. Thank you. Agenda item 14 is the Audit and Governance Forward Plan, and I'm going to actually hand over to Amanda, because Amanda always has questions for this item.
I do, so it's directly based.
It's basically
out
Amanda's item.
Yeah, Grant Thornton and SWAP, but can you just check that there's nothing obvious on there that you would like changed, amended, added? I appreciate things are a rolling feast. And
yeah, things are a bit of a rolling feast. I think November-wise, if we're bringing an audit plan for 22-23, we won't bring a sector update as well.
Okay.
But broadly, that looks fine at the moment. We will need to add in a 21-22 piece of work, but we'll determine when further down the line.
In September, we'll need to bring an audit plan for October to the end of March.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And has anyone got any other questions or comments for the forward plan? Otherwise, are members happy to note the forward plan? Keep Amanda happy. Thank you, Councillor Bearhop. I saw Councillor Veen's hand go up, so I'm taking that as a seconder. Those in favour? And thank you, everybody. That brings our meeting to an end, and I'd like to thank everyone taking part.